We all move through life burdened by an invisible weight, a relentless internal monologue that dictates every choice, every action, and every hesitation. It is the cold, unyielding voice of the shoulds. I should work harder. I should be happier. I should prioritize the expectations of others over my own peace. This is not the voice of your genuine will. It is the constant, suffocating hum of internalized obligation, a tyranny far more insidious than any external dictator. Why? Because we have willingly given it the keys to our castle, mistaking these external demands for the very definition of virtue and success. The question is not if you are free, but who holds the leash on your daily decisions. You perform, you comply, you exhaust yourself in the service of these arbitrary commands, yet the promised reward, true peace, profound purpose, never arrives. The only thing you earn is a perpetual state of agony and self-betrayal. We are not looking at a superficial problem of motivation. We are confronting an existential failure to claim sovereignty over the most valuable, non-renewable resource you possess, your intentional action. Every time you choose a should over a genuine want, you are committing a subtle, tragic act of self-forfeiture. You trade the agony of authentic choice for the pathetic comfort of compliance. Let us begin the Socratic inquiry by identifying the fundamental conflict. What happens when a should is executed? The action is performed, the task is checked, yet a residual feeling of hollowness and resentment lingers. This is the mind's silent alarm, the warning that your energy was spent in service of a foreign flag. Now ask yourself, what is the deepest fear that compels you to comply with these shoulds? Is it the fear of disappointing your parents? The fear of social judgment? The terror of being exposed as not good enough? The shoulds are merely the armor against this core fear. They promise protection from external critique in exchange for the complete surrender of your internal direction. But this armor is made of brittle glass. It offers no true defense, only a brief, agonizing postponement of the inevitable confrontation with the truth: your life is not your own. The true price of compliance is not the time spent, but the slow, quiet suffocation of your genuine self. We must now ruthlessly uncover the source of these silent tyrants. Where were these scripts written, and who is the original author of your deepest perceived duties? The first layer of tyranny is often the easiest to peel back: the hereditary shoulds. These are the unquestioned directives and value judgments absorbed from your family structure, the ancestral mandates of how a successful person must behave. They demand you pursue a certain career, maintain a certain level of financial stability, or embody a specific social image, not because you deeply desire it, but because it ensures your continued belonging and approval within the ancestral tribe. When you feel resentment toward a goal you achieved, it is often because that goal belonged to your ancestors, not to your sovereign self. The next layer is the cultural shoulds, the relentless, toxic comparison engine of social media and the peer group. These shoulds are perpetually updated, demanding that you perform a specific lifestyle: the perfect wellness routine, the ideal vacation, the socially conscious opinion. This is the tyranny of the fleeting trend. You exhaust yourself chasing a constantly moving target, and when you finally meet the expectation, the culture has already shifted, leaving you standing alone with a worthless trophy. Can you identify one core should in your life right now that you know, with radical honesty, belongs to a person who has been dead for decades or to a trend that will be obsolete in 6 months? Let us now apply the scalpel of inquiry to a concrete example. Take the phrase, I should be happy all the time. Who is the author of this toxic mandate? It is the consumer culture that requires your perpetual optimism to sell you its solutions. It is the superficial social contract that forbids the profound, necessary expression of pain and struggle. This should forces you to adopt the mask of performative well-being, denying the necessary catalytic power of your own pain. The true sovereign accepts the full spectrum of their experience, including the bitterness, the exhaustion, and the sadness. The compliant subject attempts to plaster over the cracks with forced positivity. The key to sovereignty is the radical acceptance of the natural, imperfect state of your own being. You do not owe the world a performance of happiness. You owe yourself the honesty of presence. The Socratic question is this: if you eliminated the obligation to be happy, what raw, necessary truth would you finally be allowed to feel and act upon? What honest work? The work of processing grief, setting boundaries, or changing your path is being postponed by the tyranny of the smile? The most paralyzing should is often the one that demands perfection and completion before action is permitted. I should have all the answers before I start, or I should finish this flawlessly before I release it. This is the internalized voice of the fearful judge who prefers the safety of inaction over the agony of potential failure. This should transform procrastination from a mere bad habit into a moral avoidance of responsibility. The refusal to begin is the ultimate act of self-sabotage because it prevents the necessary feedback loop of the universe from correcting your course. Stoic wisdom reminds us that our duty lies in the effort, not the flawless outcome. Your responsibility is to initiate the action, however imperfectly, and to accept the data of the consequence. The tyrant of the shoulds demands an impossible, guaranteed success. The sovereign mind demands only honest execution. Ask yourself, what essential project is currently gathering dust, held captive by the impossible demand of pre-existing perfection? And what is the actual, tangible cost in time, in opportunity, in mental peace of this crippling self-imposed standard? Now we move from deconstruction to reclamation, the radical act of replacing the should with the sovereign I will. This is the philosophical leap from the creature of reaction to the architect of intention. Every should must be put on trial and forced to answer a simple, ruthless question. Does this obligation align with the core values of my genuine self? If the answer is no, the should must be executed, not with regret, but with the calm, unyielding force of self-respect. If the answer is yes, the should is rebranded into an I will. It transforms from a foreign command into a freely chosen contract with yourself. The distinction is paramount. I should go to the gym is an act of compliance. I will train my body because I value resilience and longevities is an act of sovereign self-determination. The action remains the same, but the internal motive shifts from fear to freedom. This is the true meaning of autonomy, not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the discipline to choose your own master. You are exchanging the brittle comfort of external approval for the robust strength of internal integrity. The practice of sovereignty requires an immediate and decisive audit of the shoulds. Take a blank page and list the 5 things that you are currently doing only because you feel obligated. These are the low-grade resentments that poison your well of motivation. Next to each should, write the name of the original author. Is it my mother? Society? My fear of failure? The act of naming the source robs the command of its invisible power. The final, terrifying step is the declaration of ceasefire. For at least 1 week, you must deliberately, consciously, and without apology stop fulfilling the one should that causes you the most internal conflict. Experience the immediate, painful pushback, the shame, the anxiety, the criticism from others. This is the agony of self-liberation, the feeling of breaking a chain that has held you in comfortable captivity. The goal is to prove to your deeper self that the world does not end and your worth does not collapse simply because you chose radical alignment over pathetic compliance. The philosophical act of the I will is a declaration of war against the complacency of the spirit. Let's look at the paradox of external reward. When you perform a should successfully, the reward be it praise, money, or status feels hollow and undeserved. You cannot truly celebrate a victory that was won under duress by a version of yourself you do not respect. The reward is tainted by the bitterness of self-sacrifice. However, when you perform an I will successfully, the reward is an indivisible fusion of pleasure and moral integrity. The feeling is not just satisfaction, but a profound, resonant affirmation of your core identity. This is the difference between working for the approval of others and working for the unyielding respect of your own conscience. The growth philosopher's metric for success is not external validation, but the coherence between internal value and external action. You must refuse to accept success that comes at the cost of your soul's silence. The only success that matters is the one you can claim with uncompromised pride. Is your current life designed to win the applause of the crowd or the quiet approval of the man or woman you see in the mirror? The final, crucial realization is that the freedom from the shoulds is not the freedom to be passive. It is the freedom to embrace a far more demanding, rigorous master, yourself. The self-chosen I will is often harder, more painful, and less socially rewarded than the path of compliance. The transition from passive obedience to active self-legislation requires a profound increase in discipline, foresight, and courage. But this discipline is born of love and conviction, not fear and resentment. When you choose your own hardship, it transforms from suffering into sacred training. The Stoics taught that the highest freedom is found in the willing acceptance of necessity. To transform your external duties into internal vows is to take ownership of your necessity. This is the true power, to look at the hardest task and declare, not I must, but I choose this, for this is the cost of the man I intend to become. Your existence is your only true piece of property. Do not let it be governed by the ghosts of other people's expectations. This is not the end of the inquiry, but the beginning of your sovereign action. The price of autonomy is eternal vigilance against the return of the shoulds. They will never fully disappear. They are the background noise of social existence. Your lifelong task is to develop a discriminating ear that can immediately detect the subtle dissonance between a foreign command and your authentic will. The moment you feel that flash of resentment or inner resistance, pause and perform the audit. Who is asking this of me? If the answer is not a freely chosen commitment to a deeply held value, then the answer must be a firm, unapologetic numb. Your no is the boundary of your soul, the final, unyielding declaration of your sovereignty. Do not fear the discomfort of the no. It is the sound of authenticity pushing back against the inertia of compliance. It is the most powerful word a philosopher in training can master. Your growth continues not when you do what you should, but when you start doing what you will. The choice is yours, and the responsibility is absolute. The tyrant of the shoulds is particularly lethal in the domain of personal boundaries. I should always be available to help others, or I should never inconvenience my friends. This is the should of the martyr complex, a subtle form of arrogance that believes your time and energy are infinitely renewable and that your worth is proven only through continuous self-sacrifice. This should makes you a creature of external demand, incapable of prioritizing your own non-negotiable needs for rest, focus, and self-cultivation. The sovereign self understands that setting boundaries is not an act of selfishness, but an act of stewardship, a necessary prerequisite for being able to genuinely serve from a place of strength, not depletion. The person who cannot say no to others will inevitably say no to their own highest calling. The moment you sacrifice your internal sanctuary to appease an external request, you have betrayed the sacred trust of your own potential. Ask yourself, what vital personal project is currently on hold because your boundaries are too porous and you are trapped in the servitude of other people's crises? The transition from should to will also has profound implications for your identity and self-worth. When you live under the shoulds, your identity is entirely conditional. I am a good person if I comply. This is a state of perpetual fragility, where your self-worth is constantly dependent on a flawless performance of external obligations. The sovereign identity, however, is unconditional. I am worthy because I exist, and my worth is proven by my chosen acts of integrity. The true self operates from a position of innate value, not earned value. This shift is terrifying because it removes the external scaffolding and forces you to build your self-esteem on the hard, internal bedrock of self-acceptance. The greatest freedom is to release the desperate need to prove your worth to anyone, including the internalized tyrant of your own mind. Sovereignty is the quiet, unyielding knowledge that you are enough, even if you fail to meet every ridiculous should the world has ever invented. What should is holding your identity hostage, demanding a ransom of your peace and authenticity. Let us address the inevitable backlash, the guilt and shame that accompany the first attempts at self-liberation. These feelings are merely the dying screams of the internalized tyrant as you starve it of compliance. They are not moral verdicts. They are psychological defense mechanisms designed to pull you back into the comfortable cage of conformity. You must learn to treat the feeling of guilt as proof of progress, not proof of error. The greater the guilt, the more fundamental the should you are successfully dismantling. The growth philosopher acknowledges the pain of the transition, but refuses to let a transient emotional state dictate a permanent life choice. This is the difficult, necessary distinction between shame, I am a bad person, and self-correction, I made a mistake in my process. The tyrant wants you to feel shame for choosing yourself. The sovereign self allows for temporary guilt in the service of long-term moral coherence. You cannot be a slave to the tyranny of others and simultaneously be the master of your own soul. Choose the momentary discomfort of guilt over the lifetime corrosion of resentment. The liberation from the shoulds transforms your relationship with your future self. When you act on shoulds, you are constantly creating a debt to your future self, a debt of unfulfilled potential, lost time, and resentment. Your future self inherits the exhaustion of a life lived in service of others' expectations. But when you act from the sovereign, I will, you are constantly making an investment in your future self, an investment in integrity, focused energy, and personal coherence. Your future self becomes your greatest ally, not your weary beneficiary. This is the core of moral philosophy in practice, ensuring that your actions in the present moment are a source of strength and pride for the person you are actively becoming. The highest act of self-love is to guard your present action from the foreign influence of past conditioning. Do not let your current fatigue be the ghost of compliance past. Your I will today is the foundation of your uncompromised autonomy tomorrow. The key takeaway is not just to eliminate the shoulds, but to replace the internal void with something rigorous and genuine. You must define your own code of conduct, a non-negotiable set of self-chosen values and duties. This is your sovereign vow. It is a declaration of what you will do, why you will do it, and what you are willing to sacrifice for it. The difference is the ownership of the sacrifice. When you sacrifice for a should, you are a victim. When you sacrifice for an I will, you are a warrior. The most difficult step is the active formulation of this code. It requires the quiet, terrifying reflection that the tyranny of the shoulds always prevents. Stop running toward the obligations of others and instead carve out the silence needed to hear your own commands. Only in that silence can you reclaim the raw, unburdened power of your genuine will. The philosopher king is the one who rules himself first. Now, I urge you to perform the sovereign shift in one small yet profound area of your life. Identify the most immediate should that is causing you a low-level daily resentment. Write it down. Now, next to it, write the sentence, I cease this obligation because I choose my own autonomy. This is your declaration. You do not need external permission or a dramatic confrontation. You only need the internal, unyielding commitment to your own truth. This single, conscious act of cessation is your first step toward building a life that is truly cohesive and resonant with your deepest values. This is the final challenge of the Socratic path. Do you have the courage to trust your own judgment over the expectations of the entire world? Your journey to self-mastery is an endless series of these quiet, terrifying, and profoundly liberating choices. Share in the comments one should you are ready to dismantle this week and let us witness the collective act of sovereign rebellion. The time to reclaim your will is now.